weren't getting the signs they wanted from the jury. It was clear that O.J. Simpson was trying to read face by face the jury, and he kept tensing up his face. Karen Smith, didn't it from his facial expression, didn't you think that was a defendant who thought he was going to be found guilty?
Certainly someone who was worried, although as we can tell by the people in court, that jury never did show which way they were leaning. They intended to remain stone-faced, and so it's always very difficult for a defendant who is about to hear the verdict. And
absolutely.
You prepare yourself.
And the lawyers as well.
Yes, and so you have to sort of be a realist, know it could go either way, and you have to prepare yourself. You notice you rise. It really does feel as if it's judgment day and you're standing before this group of people who hold your fate in your hands. You could certainly see the immediate relief at the defense table, and I have to say the dignity of
themselves for good or bad news, and then
they didn't betray any emotion one way or the other. They,
you know, I'm sure the millions of fans that Mr. Simpson has are the thousands of members.
Well, the last time we saw O.J. Simpson...
Just share this with our viewers. Under the United States Constitution, under California law, there is no appeal allowed by the prosecution in the loss of this case. The reason the double jeopardy clause of the Constitution precludes anyone from being charged twice by the same court, i.e. state or federal court, for the same offense. Now, you may wonder, remember Rodney King, there was an acquittal in the state court, then a prosecution in the federal court. Well, you have to have a federal law that covers the offense. And here, by my quick perusal of the relevant federal statutes last night, there's no federal statute on point that covers murder of a civilian, if you will. Now, you remember Rodney King dealt with actions by a police officer under color of law, and therein lied the federal jurisdiction. But here, there's no federal jurisdiction. So the bottom line is double jeopardy applies. This case is over, and O.J. Simpson, as you've indicated, was fully intends to move on with his life.
Manny, we talk about costs on this trial. I believe the latest figures we've seen, it cost the county $9 million. LA County spent $9 million on this trial.
We're getting all those commercial jobs again?
Well, that I don't know, Judge. Maybe.
You can bet me.
This is retired Judge Jack Tenner has joined us this morning, as well as former Deputy DA Robert Ernenwine. And as we said, a complete rejection of the prosecution case, and I suppose that
Does the county,
Right, we just want to say, look at this line of people out here as the vans leave the jail. We believe it's the van with the rack on the top that is carrying O.J. Simpson. We want to let you know that we are monitoring a position where there will be a press conference by the prosecution just momentarily. As soon as they approach the microphones, we will take that shot simultaneously and let you see, let you hear that press conference as well.
Let's ask Jeff Michael what he knows about the process and procedure at the jail. Jeff?
Yeah, Harold, I just spoke to a representative from the Sheriff's Department. It's very interesting. It seems O.J. Simpson is receiving the special treatment that he has received all along. Normally, when an inmate is to be released or is acquitted of a charge, he goes back to the inmate reception center, I'm told, which is the area that we've been watching here from Newscopter 7. He then goes inside. He is debriefed, which means he's told how the process will work. He is fingerprinted. This is interesting. Normally, inmates are fingerprinted to match their identification to ID on file to make sure that they're releasing the right person. Obviously, in this case, that is not a concern. After that, they are given their clothing, the property that they had when they were first arrested, and I don't know if anyone can remember that far back to know what O.J. Simpson had when he was first taken into custody. That is all the normal procedure. According to the Sheriff's Department, I have been told that Simpson was not going to be afforded any special courtesy, but from what we're seeing from Newscopter 7, it appears that is not the case.
We know that he was wearing jeans and a golf shirt from Sherwood Country Club. That's what he had on when he was taken into custody.
Well, then that's what he has probably in his hands as he's leaving in this van.
We've been told now that it's not the first van, it is the second white van without the rack that is carrying O.J. Simpson. As Captain Ron gets a shot of that, a close-up shot of that. And here they head off.
Paul Hollenbeck is at controls today.
I automatically say, Captain Ron, sorry about that, Paul.
Good reason. Well, we're going to follow along here because we know the scene outside of the courtroom. There was a momentary bedlam, people cheering and chanting because they agreed with the 2 not guilty verdicts in the O.J. Simpson double murder trial. But now our attention is focused on the van carrying ex-prisoner O.J. Simpson. Now a free man, a person who will not be retried. here in the state of California.
And Harold, we've just learned that the Simpson family is preparing to step to their microphones as well. And again, as soon as one of these press conferences, either prosecution or Simpson family begins, we will leave this picture up to a double box so that you can hear what the families or the prosecution has to say, and as well as watch O.J. Simpson as he begins this journey into freedom.
All right, we have John North also downtown at the courthouse. John, more folks coming by giving you their opinions of how they think this thing went down?
Well, a few people did, including, of course, Cynthia McFadden, and she had to leave to go finish her work, but she did give me some information. It's kind of interesting, things we could not see on the camera. As Fred Goldman left the courtroom, he said loud enough for everybody in the courtroom to hear as he walked by the Simpson family and directed at O.J. Simpson. He again muttered very loudly in a stage whisper, "Murderer." The family, the Goldman family, of course, at least outwardly affected the most, crying, breaking down. We're waiting now for word on whether who we're going to hear from first, either the prosecutors or some members of the Simpson family. They have indicated that in a few minutes they will probably hold a news conference or at least read some sort of a statement down on the 9th floor in Department 103, doing that because of security concerns, of course, and the members of the Simpson family very excited about seeing him again back in his environment at home, the mansion. Apparently, he may be going back to Rockingham. But anyway, that's what we're waiting for here. Prosecutors are expected to hold a news conference. We don't know when. The Simpson family sometime soon.
One thing O.J. Simpson has learned immediately, even though he's been incarcerated for over a year, traffic in L.A. hasn't improved one bit.
Well, I'd like to point out, too, that I think everybody noticed it while he was in the courtroom. It was almost like any athlete, anybody who's ever been involved in anything with a lot of tension. While there was a close-up that they were passing out the verdict forms before they started reading the verdict, it was as if there you see the van heading down the freeway again, this time going away as a free man forever. Simpson came into the courtroom, first of all, looked around before the camera came off of the seal, smiled at the defense team, and it was almost as if he was giving everybody a thumbs up. When they were passing out the verdict forms, it was as if he took this deep breath. It was like putting on a game face. It was very obvious. And then shortly after that, he stood to hear the verdict. The families of the victims, we don't know if they're going to have anything to say, at least in the immediate future. They were going to go upstairs to the 18th floor and be available, but we have heard nothing yet from them. So as soon as we get something definitive, we'll let you know. Isn't this a marked contrast? Now, everybody has to be having the same thoughts now. O.J. Simpson is in that van heading down the freeways. What a difference from the 17th of June, 1994, and that slow-speed freeway chase that ended with his arrest. He's been in jail now well over 400 days, 474 days today that he was in jail, and now headed home in casual clothing, a free man.
It's the 4 level. We're just talking about which freeway it is. It's the Hollywood Freeway North, approaching the 4 level as we speak right now. Again, we're watching this white van. John, I'm just curious what the conventional wisdom was in that heap of press that you've been living in for the past year. You know, as you talk to people over the last 24 hours, it's been very split. He's absolutely the short deliberation means he's guilty, absolutely not guilty. I'm just curious, what did people like Dominic Dunn and Cynthia McFadden make of it?
Well, we may get to ask Dominic that in a few minutes ourselves. We were pretty much split on it. I've been covering this case since the day after the murders, and at least with the trial, you learn to kind of pinch yourself and say, now, wait a minute, don't jump to conclusions. Normally, a quick verdict like this would be favorable to the defense. But given the readback yesterday and given the demeanor of the jurors, now I've covered a few trials going back to the DeLorean trial back in '85, and usually you have a signal from the jury. In this case, none. I mean, if there were any signals coming from this jury when they walked into the courtroom yesterday for the readback, which I saw, and those who were in there those reporters and other people who had managed to get in there, it was so quick, for the announcement that there was a verdict, and those who were in there today, nothing, expressionless. As Cynthia pointed out, and we've all, jurors who have been dismissed have pointed out the same thing. They know that this trial is closely watched. I don't know if they know how much it's been watched, but every time they come into that courtroom and we all stand up, every eye in that courtroom is staring at them. And during much of the testimony, if there's something a little dicey, if there's autopsy photos, whatever, we're all staring at them to gauge their reaction. So maybe that accounts for their lack of expressions, both yesterday and today, because they knew the whole world would be watching and would potentially be reporting it out. And as we've heard over and over again, and I've had many attorneys tell me this over the years, that you play to two courts. You're playing to the jury even if it's sequestered. Attorneys are, defense attorneys. One of the reasons why they've been so vocal outside the courtroom, hoping that through pillow talk, through telephone conversations, whatever, with their families, that some of the things that they're not supposed to hear about will seep into them. Harlan Braun, who represented one of the defendants in the Rodney King trial, the civil rights trial in federal court, was very honest about that, saying that that's what you play to. You play to the people who are sequestered, hoping it will get through. You play to the next jury. And whether or not it's been effective, we'll find out, hopefully, with some of the jurors later on today. Live from the criminal courts building as we watch O.J. Simpson perhaps going home. John North, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, John, thank you. Yes, O.J. Simpson, having gotten off of the Hollywood Freeway on the Harbor Freeway heading south, leading us to believe that he will take it south to the 405, and the Santa Monica Freeway probably, and then perhaps over to Brentwood. We are watching it live along with you. Christine Lund is standing by with an attorney involved in a number of high-profile cases here in Los Angeles. Christine, come on in. We'll listen to what you have to say as we watch O.J. heading down the freeway at this hour.
Right, Harold, thanks so much. Ira Salzman here, of course, known for so many cases, known all over the country, and particularly in a case that was defined by racial issues, the Rodney King case. Cochran asked this jury to put the mountain of evidence aside and strike a blow against racism. Is that what has happened here, in your opinion? You were very surprised by this verdict.
Well, it's hard to say what the jury came to grips with, but the one thing that was validated is what Judge Ito referred to as an artful jury nullification, and I would disagree with Mr. Bakewell. What jurors are there to do is decide guilt or innocence, not broader societal issues. So all we can presume is that the jury listened to the evidence, called it the way they saw it. But I think another important point to be brought out is that I would love for my clients to get the treatment Mr. Simpson gets after being acquitted. What is not the norm is his rush through the jail.
Normally takes how long?
Oh, at least a day. I've had one client acquitted, and he remained at the IRC for close to 48 hours, and when I inquired, the sheriff said, well, we're processing him, we're busy. And they don't get police escorts leaving the jail, so this continued preference seems to continue even through his release.
This jury conviction, or jury decision came back, not a conviction, of course, the world knows now, almost like a reflex. It was so fast. It seems as though it's not only a decision, but an absolute condemnation, a profound rejection for the case that was presented by the prosecuting attorneys. Is this true?
Well, they certainly rejected the people's proof, and we'll never know unless the jury decides to come forward and speak about how they decided things. But to come back so quickly, they clearly took votes. There were clearly votes in favor of acquittal. Perhaps there's a holdout. Typically, when you ask for read back, somebody needs to have their mind made up, and then the last few people were convinced. Clearly, the old idea that's drummed into us that it's only circumstantial evidence seemed to have held sway.
Well, there was a mountain of it, and you say, and a lot of people have said, that people have been convicted so many times for so much less.
Well, DNA is not something new. The one thing that keeps getting drowned out is that the legal principles and the facts of the O.J. Simpson case, except for perhaps the Bronco chase, were ordinary. People are convicted, tried for DNA all the time. During the pendency of this case, there were a number of DNA areas. And let's remember, prior to DNA, we had serology and the glove evidence. These are all classic circumstantial evidence types of cases where people get acquitted or convicted all the time. But DNA is nothing new. It's used routinely throughout Los Angeles County, Southern California, and quite often jurors come back guilty. A good example is a gentleman named Hirsch, who was sentenced yesterday in Orange County on a murder conviction where the police found DNA in a cigarette butt that was 2 years old. And the jury in Orange County came back with a conviction. He received a 30-year sentence yesterday.
We saw one of the jurors leave, though. He'd been dismissed and was asked about the DNA evidence, which was incredibly complex, and it was burdensome. And clearly this juror didn't understand any of it. He made the point that he saw it as blood typing, simple, ordinary blood typing that's been around for years, and didn't make any of the connections into just how definitive DNA type of evidence really is, infinitely more decisive than mere blood typing, and didn't really get that. So evidently they didn't care that much about this evidence, this mountain of DNA technical evidence, and they found it perhaps too burdensome. Do you think the Furman factor was, okay, we've got to take a break. Harold, back to you.
So we're going to go down to the courtroom right now. The Simpson family is holding a news conference. Let's listen in live. They are in the courtroom, still very emotional, as you can well imagine. Mr. Douglas on the left, F. Lee Bailey, the jury consultant, Joellen Demetrius, and Robert Shapiro, Mr. Blazier, and to our right, we can see the family. And a horde of reporters in front of them, and a news conference about to begin shortly as we continue to monitor the vehicle with O.J. Simpson inside.
Introduce themselves, say their name so that you all know who is here, who will be speaking. That will be followed by Ms. Cochran making an introduction, stated by the family. Ms. Cochran will then make another statement, and then we'll have questions, and I'll recognize those people who have questions so that it's not a lot of confusion.
Howard Harris.
Sean Chapman.
Gerald Ullman.
Carl Douglas.
Johnny Cochran.
Lee Bailey. Robert Shapiro.
Bob Blazier, Barry Scheck, and Peter Neufeld.
Shirley Baker.
Jason Simpson.
Arnell Simpson.
Eunice Darden Simpson.
Carmelita Simpson Durio.
That's it.
Joellen Demetrius.
Thank you all very much for coming today. First, I want to thank God for this verdict. He always directs our paths, and he's worthy to be praised. And at the outset, Jason Simpson, the eldest male child of O.J. Simpson, will read a statement from Mr. Simpson and from the family.
I want to echo that. Me and my family want to thank God, without whom I don't know where we'd be. He's truly
amazing.
A statement from my father. A statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned. My second obligation is to my family and to those friends who never wavered in their support. But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow. I can only hope that someday, despite every prejudicial thing that has been said about me publicly, both in and out of the courtroom, people will come to understand and believe that I would not, could not, and did not kill anyone. My father will have more to say at a later time.
Thank you, Jason, and from the family. We will take questions. I'll just make a brief statement, then we'll take questions thereafter. On behalf of the entire team, I'd just like to say how grateful we are for this verdict, because we think this verdict bespeaks justice. We never wavered in our faith. We were always optimistic, and that optimism proved right. I'd like to just individually thank all of the team members. Everybody on this team played a great, great part in this victory. There's no question about it. We hung together in the tough times. We always saw this day coming, and now that it's here, we feel really good about it. I pay particular tribute today to Joellen Demetrius, the lady over my right shoulder, who helped us pick this jury. We lost 10 jurors, but yet we still had 12 who we felt did the right thing. The other two people who aren't present that I'd like to thank are
Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who couldn't make it back from New York, but they're in Neufeld's living room today watching this, and we send our love and regards to them. Mr. Simpson, needless to say, is ecstatic, wants to get on with his life, and we are all ecstatic, so we'll take your questions.
Johnny, a lot of people are already saying that this was a case in which race transcended the facts, overcame the facts. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question, Linda. If you watch this trial, if you watch the arguments, then you know this idea of any jury nullification or the idea we didn't have the facts is preposterous. In the opening part of my argument, through a strategy we devised with Lee Bailey, we said that if we could shatter the prosecution's timeline so that O.J. Simpson couldn't have committed this crime, that there would be a reasonable doubt. That's even before we ever got to the socks, the glove, and Furman or anything else. So these pundits who make those statements don't know what they're talking about. They haven't tried cases. They don't know what they're talking about. This was a case based upon the evidence. And so that's all we were saying. There was a reasonable doubt. And when you see a trial that lasts 9 months, where the jury takes this period of time, they have gone to what we said. That if you look at that timeline, O.J. Simpson could not, did not, would not have committed this crime. And I think that becomes very clear. So I think that's a very appropriate question.
Johnny, was there a point during the summation, during your closing argument, that you were looking in the eyes of the jury and you knew something, was telling you something, that you were winning?
Well, it's always hard to say, Joe, but I mean, I felt that they were very attentive. For a tired jury, they were very attentive. And then one of the jurors got up and went out, and when she came back, she'd been crying. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then they all started, a lot of them took notes who hadn't been taking notes before. And I could contrast that with the other arguments. They took a lot of notes, and I felt that was probably important.
Johnny, the jurors went out for 4 hours. Right before this trial, there seemed to be a lot of sadness among the Simpson family. Did you prepare O.J. Simpson for a guilty verdict?
You know, that's a tough question. We never talked about a guilty verdict, and that would have been our fault. But we were so optimistic. We really believed in this case and in O.J. Simpson. And we talked only, even yesterday, when I got back to town last night, I talked to O.J. Simpson last night at 10 o'clock, and he could only talk about going home and seeing his children.
But with the Park testimony, when they asked to see the Park testimony, did you think there was a possibility for a guilty verdict?
Well, you know, what we thought was, you know, we've been around a long time, and what we thought was this, that 1 or 2 jurors had a question about the timeline. And I talked to Carl about 5 times yesterday in a row from where I was, and I wanted to know where they stopped, what they heard. They heard, among other things, that Cato Kalin was seen about 10:49, maybe 3 or 4 minutes after those knocks, just like I read in the transcript. It wasn't 10:52 or 10:53 like Marcia wanted to push it back in her timeline. And I felt good about that. So I felt that when you have the rereads are very confusing. You have the rereads, those who have a problem then say, okay, I've heard enough. And they go back in and do their job.
Johnny, this is a question for you or
Okay,
perhaps
sure,
one of the members of the family. I wondered what Mr. Simpson is going to do today, now that he's an ex-defendant, where he's going and where he's...
I don't think we can really talk about that because for security concerns, Jeffrey. But he's going to start his life all over again.
And what are his short-term plans, or is he going to stay in Los Angeles, or?
I think he's going to probably address all these things himself soon.
Yes, Mr. Cochran, you have said publicly that you believe race plays a role in everything. I'd like to know what role race played in this trial.
Well, what I said before, Jim, was that race plays a part of everything in America. And we need to understand that. And then we stop ducking and dodging from that, we'll be better off. Now, basically, in this case, I think that from a standpoint of race, it was introduced.
O.J. Simpson's vehicle is now heading north on the 405, the San Diego Freeway, and chances are he will get up to the Sunset Boulevard off-ramp, and it would appear that he is heading home to his Rockingham address. Let's listen back into Johnny Cochran.
They introduced Furman, and then we dealt with it. But we choose to call it the credibility card. I mean, we pursued his credibility. Do you know that on that jury instruction, a witness willfully false in one material part, he distrusted in others? For all we know, they could have knocked out all of Furman's Van Adder's testimony. So that's the answer to that. I mean, so I think it became very apparent because They brought him. He was their witness. We didn't call him.
Johnny, in Jason's opening statement, he said that O.J. wanted to pursue the killer or killers in these murders once he gets out. Does he offer any idea or ideas as to who this could be?
I'm sure we'll all talk about that, and I'm sure he has some strong ideas, and we'll be talking about that, and you'll probably hear more about that, Pat, in the days to come.
For now.
With all due respect to the attorneys, I'd prefer hearing from some family members, if I may, particularly the women to my right. What was the last 24 hours like for you? Shirley, Carmelita, Arnell, Mrs. Simpson?
We were prayerful. Yeah.
We were very prayerful, but we were on an emotional roller coaster. And when one would break down, the other ones would come together and lift them up, and then the next one would break down. So we were just all there for each other. But, well, I was always in prayer. I knew that my son was innocent. And I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much. And I believed in that. And so therefore, that's why I kept the faith. And I had confidence in his representative. Thank you.
Arnell, if I may.
Yesterday was a difficult day, but there was a peacefulness, a calmness for myself, and I know with my other family members. We're a very strong family, and we stick together, and we were very prayerful, and we just knew that no matter what was going to happen, that God was going to take care of us. And we didn't really go one way or the other, but we just knew that God was going to take care of us, and just knowing that we would get through it.
Shirley?
What we knew, when you know that someone is innocent, you are able to hold your head up high, and that's the one thing that our family has tried to do during this whole trial, is to carry ourselves with great dignity and to let the justice system do what it has to do. We knew O.J. was innocent, and we had all the confidence in the world and the team that was put together, and we're just thankful to them, to O.J., to all of you, to all the people that's been so nice to us. We want you guys to know that we really appreciate the way that you have responded to us in the good and bad times. And we want to thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, I just feel like, you know, for so many months you've been asking me, how do I feel? And I tell you, I just feel like standing on top of this table and dancing a jig. And I just want to thank you guys.
Yes, Johnny. Do you see this verdict returned as any referendum on the LAPD?
No, I don't want to read a lot of things into the verdict. I mean, I think, and I take this opportunity to compliment the district attorney's office. They fought very, very hard. This was a real heck of a trial, believe you me. You saw lawyers go at it on both sides. It's hard to say because we haven't talked to the jurors. I do believe that there were credibility problems with members of the LAPD, some who testified in this case, and I believe that probably has had some effect. And I think we saw some other things too, and I hope that for this trial, we always look for something positive. I hope that the coroner's office will get back together. Citizens of LA County should demand that. The LAPD lab will do what's necessary to get up to speed. We deserve better. I hope that the investigators will do better jobs in future cases. They'll abide by the state law. If the state
Over a year ago, when O.J. Simpson was in the van with Al Cowlings, he's heading down Sunset, and now word is getting out about his acquittal today, and we saw what appeared to be a camera person right up front taking a picture, but it also appears now that several well-wishers are waving to O.J., much as they did on the night of that infamous slow chase all the way from Orange County. O.J. Simpson appears now to be heading home to Rockingham. He's getting very close.
Back together.
With God, in faith, we got to take it one day at a time. And there's no answers because so much has happened. There's just a lot of mending and healing that needs to take place there. And for me to answer, I can't really answer that question because we just really have to take it one day at a time. But we'll do the best that we can. Well, I don't know. I don't know. When we get to that, we'll deal with it. I think you should always remember, though, you have two families, the Brown family and the Simpson family, and we are two families, and we have two children that we love, and we're going to do what we can, the very best for the children.
Johnny, I want to ask you what you make of the jury's behavior over the past couple of days, and especially today. They've refused to talk to the lawyers. They don't want to explain their verdict to the public. They came to court today dressed in exercise wear, very casually, after we've seen them for 8 months dressed in suits to come to court. Were they trying to send a message? Were they being contemptuous of the proceedings at all?
I don't think so. I think they knew they were going to go home today, Sally. I think they knew yesterday they had to wait one more day. I think Judge Ito had them all packed, so I'm sure their wonderful clothes that we saw during this trial were all packed away. I think they're a very respectful jury. They were very professional. As all of you reported yesterday, you could not tell on their faces how they had voted. They were very professional. I wasn't here yesterday, and I looked for different things. I could tell today. I could tell today it was going to be all right for us, I felt.
Still try to talk with them?
I would love to, somewhere down the road, talk to them, because they've done a really important task here. I would like to do that.
Johnny, there were many yesterday, and no doubt there will be many today, who are concerned about the rapidity with which the jury came to its decision. There are those who say it appears as if it's impossible that they hadn't either reached a determination on their own, as the judges said not to do before they were supposed to, or perhaps had talked to one another, that it seems as if it just isn't possible to have reviewed this much material in this short a period of time.
What I think, and maybe some of my colleagues will want to respond to this, what I think is this. When they went out on Friday, you remember that I was at the podium when they had a foreperson already. I think this jury had a sense of whom they respected, and in fact, Tracy Kennedy, one of our former jurors, said last night that they always respected juror number one, and so that probably wasn't a hard decision for them. I believe that based upon having participated in the arguments, that this jury felt the prosecution hadn't proven this case, and when ultimately you talk to them, that's going to be where they came down. If you didn't believe the timeline, if you didn't believe that O.J. Simpson had enough time to commit this crime, that he couldn't go upstairs, change clothes, bathe, throw away all the clothes, the gun, the knife, the weapon, the shoes, and all that stuff, Ms. Clark gave him 5 minutes to do all that. If you think about that reasonably, and then tie that into the circumstantial evidence thing, is that reasonable? I mean, who in America, you get caught up in all these facts, but you got to look at what the law is. So if they made that determination, it didn't take very long. And if one or two people said, well, let's hear what Ellen Park has to say on the timing, then you have a verdict.
You went on the timeline, not on Mark Furman.
Well, I haven't talked to him yet, but I think it may be a combination of both. I don't know.
Johnny, one of the interpretations of this case is going to be that if you are rich in America, you can get a good outcome. But if you are poor, and then the justice system will just run over you. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I'd like to let one of my brother or sisters answer that question. Bobby Blazer, Bob, Shapiro, anyone?
It's an interesting concept, and there's a lot of truth to that. That unfortunately, in most places in this country, people who do not have adequate funds cannot properly defend themselves. But it worked both ways in this case. In this case, our small group of lawyers that were put together from June the 14th were up against the most intensive investigation probably in the history of criminal justice. Not only did the Los Angeles Police Department participate in this, the Chicago Police Department, the FBI, Interpol. They brought in DAs from 2 different jurisdictions, as well as 40 to 50 DAs. They had upwards of 100 officers at any one time investigating this case. And if we did not have adequate resources, we wouldn't have been able to...
this news conference, and Lisa, it appears now they are on Bristol, heading up to...
Boy, just like 15 months ago, January the 17th, June 17th, 1994. There's the left-hand turn onto Ashford.
We notice as well as he...
We have this line of media over here, and we've got barricades on both sides of the front entrance of the house. Seems to me that O.J. Simpson is going to be coming in.
Comment on that. I think no matter how much resources a defendant has, they can never match the resources of the state.
February of this year.
Yeah, the jury visited the crime scene on Bundy, then moved to O.J. Simpson's estate.
You're quite correct in that. There are 2 vans involved here. I assume we have the right one.
And helicopters. So we expect them to arrive momentarily. This is the live picture here outside of his estate. There are people inside his home right now. We understand there is a caterer and some other people getting prepared to welcome him. The last time he was home, he was actually at this estate once while he was being held when, if you may recall, when the jury and the lawyers came out here to review this area and the crime scene. So that is the last time he saw his house. In fact, we must have at least 6 or 7 helicopters above us right now hovering over here, perhaps as many as 7 or 8 at this point. So he must be getting a lot closer. People are gathering a lot closer to the fence. This is the situation right now. It's unbelievable. There are so many helicopters at this point hovering over his estate, and you can feel the sense of urgency. In fact, here comes a caravan. I see a caravan pulling up. I can't see through the crowd here. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Jay is home. He's gotten out of the van in this driveway. Okay, I am right outside the driveway, and there's a big crowd, and I don't have a ladder, but the photographer does, so you've got a good vantage point then.
Al Cowlings, who hugged him at that moment. Al Cowlings, the same person at this same location. This time, tears of joy. O.J. Simpson, a free man, being welcomed home by Al Cowlings, the man who we last saw stepped out of a white vehicle, telling the police to stay back, also telling O.J.'s oldest son to get away. At that time, there were police officers inside the home trying to negotiate a peaceful settlement, a peaceful resolution to that chase that O.J. had been involved with. But now O.J. Simpson has gotten out of the van, greeted by friends, and is inside his home.
There's going to be much celebrating in that house today. The family of O.J. Simpson, the ones who don't live in...
Getting together, you've seen some...
like this, for him to... went over to the house. They spent the night there last night, and you heard Shirley Baker's daughter say that they all got into their Uncle O.J.'s bedroom, as she said, and prayed together with Arnell leading a prayer meeting. And now they've had it catered, and they're going to celebrate the return of O.J. Simpson to his home today.
And very quickly, a crowd gathered out in front, as Anna told us, people there, well-wishers. O.J. Simpson, a pop icon in this country. We saw it when they had that high-speed chase, people actually on the freeways, the overpasses, holding up signs, exhorting, go juice, go juice. Now word getting out that he has been acquitted. People in the neighborhood beginning to come over and to yell and to cheer and to, you know, vent their feelings, their happiness over the verdict.
Harold, you know, it was interesting. On Friday, Kathy Randy, his longtime assistant, spoke with Barbara Walters here on ABC, and Barbara commented later that it was a conversation O.J. had condoned and perhaps was the beginning of the rehabilitation of O.J. Simpson in case of acquittal, and that's something that that we will watch as the months progress. O.J. Simpson will have to try and get his reputation back.
Anna Chavez, you're on the scene there. Can you get a microphone up to any of those folks that have come over to see O.J. Simpson come home? Anna Garcia?
I'm sorry, Harold, it's hard to hear you over the helicopters above.
I'm happy to hear that, as a matter of fact, Anna Garcia. I went back a few years, referring to you as an old colleague of mine here at Channel 7. Oh. Anna, can you get a microphone up to any of those folks who have come over to see O.J.?
Well, actually, these people right over here, excuse me. Hi there, I was talking, hello, we're on live. We were talking to you earlier. I understand you're a resident here of 41 years. You're here outside O.J.'s house. Can you give me your impressions of his return home and the verdict?
Well, I was shocked at the verdict, and as far as his returning home, they decided he's not guilty, so this is his home. That's where he belongs.
Was that the verdict you were expecting?
No, I was shocked.
Absolutely shocked.
All right, Anna, we're going to go to the prosecution news conference right now, live.
We have all of the particulars. District Attorney Gil Garcetti. We just saw Chris Darden to the right. Marcia Clark just off of our screen left. And the prosecution to tell us their reaction to what has to be a very disappointing verdict today in the courtroom.
I'm going to ask everyone who is watching who's listening to this to pause for a moment. Remember why we're here. We're here for Ron, we're here for Nicole, and we're here for every other victim of violent crime. Our job is to seek justice. This case was fought as a battle for victims of domestic violence. We hope this verdict does not discourage victims who are out there throughout our communities, throughout this country, from seeking help. I know there are women especially who are right this very moment living in fear, living in violence. We're asking you to reach out for help. There is new help out there. Think of yourself. Think of the children who are in the house too. Don't wait. If you wait, it could be too late. We are, all of us, profoundly disappointed with the verdict. We want to hear from the jurors before we make any other comments concerning their decision today. But it was clear, at least it is to me, and I think other members of the prosecution team, that this was an emotional trial, and apparently their decision was based on emotion that overcame the reason. Certainly we have received calls and letters from all over the country praising the efforts of the prosecution. This is done no matter what verdict was going to be reached. We had many men and women throughout the country call and thank us for the efforts, many in tears. I am proud of every member of my staff, but there are particular people who made sacrifices. To the Goldmans and to the Browns, we cried with you. We shared energy, and as Chris said, during the most difficult times, we looked at you, and you gave us all strength, tremendous strength. We will never know the loss, really the pain of your loss. We tried as diligently, as hard, as professionally as we could to seek justice in this case. My thanks go to all the law enforcement agencies that assisted us. Los Angeles Police Department, obviously, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, Department of Justice. But I think most particularly, I still, myself as the district attorney, want to thank the two lead investigators in the case, Phil Van Adder and Tom Lang. Los Angeles should be grateful for the professional job and loyalty that they've given over several decades. There are a couple companies that gave pro bono services to us. Absolutely first class. Decision Quest assisted us with many things. Many of you saw the pyramid. That was their idea. They did all of this. They invested pro bono nearly $1 million their own to help us seek justice. Cognitech also helped us. There were many others who helped. We had restaurants and others who were helping with the staff. I want to thank, too, every member of my office. They helped us. They don't have their name out in front, but they helped us. And more importantly, they helped every day with all the Rons and all the Nicoles that we handle every day. This has been one case. It's been an important case. But literally, we have thousands of these cases. Finally, to our team, to our law clerks, who really worked so hard. These were students in law school who gave up so much to work with us. To the new prosecutors who joined our team, who took and passed the bar and became deputy DAs, and they gave their all. To the support staff from Patty Joe, to everyone else involved, our victim witness people, but certainly to the media relations, special thanks to Suzanne Childs. Suzanne worked the 7 days a week. As you know, she's a lawyer, former deputy district attorney, as well as a journalist. She made your life, the journalists, easier, made our lives easier too. Our investigators, our Bureau of Investigation, goes unheralded, but they did fabulous work. Especially Gary Schramm and Mike Armstrong and several others. They were there whenever we needed them, whenever the families needed them. They were there. Finally, of course, we have the lawyers that you saw in court. Let me thank them because they did a first-class job. To Bill Hodgman, you know Bill, he managed the unmanageable, but he did it. To Alan Yokelson, to Sherry Lewis, to Hank Goldberg, to Brian Kelberg, to Lisa Kahn, to Rock Harmon, Woody Clark, and Scott Gordon. Every person here gave their all. It was a professional effort seeking justice. We had, I perhaps should give thanks to Woody and Rock's bosses, the district attorneys of San Diego and Alameda County. They helped when we needed the help, and again, it was a first-class effort. Of course, lastly, to Chris and to Marcia. None of you will ever know the personal sacrifices everyone here made. None of you will know, too, the sacrifices that the families of this team made. They didn't see their husbands or their wives, the fathers and their mothers, for 16 months. I think on behalf of every citizen who has been looking at this case in an objective way, I think they want me to say thank you. And I am saying thank you. And let me end by saying we deserve to be proud of the effort that we made in this case. I am very proud of the total effort made in this case. We stand here in front of you with our heads held high because we did everything professionally possible to seek the justice in this case. I'm going to ask Marcia and then Chris and then Bill if they want to make any comments or thank you. Now would be the appropriate time to do it. We will then, when they finish, address a few of your questions. But I will also add that because we've not had the opportunity to hear from the jury, they've indicated they're not interested in talking to any of the lawyers. Maybe they'll talk to you. We will withhold further comment for the rest of the day. But let me give Marcia an opportunity to say thanks.
I first want to extend my thanks to the families of the victims, to the Goldmans and to the Browns. Their strength, their dignity, and their support throughout this trial have been tremendous and a tremendous source of inspiration and strength to all of us. My sympathy and my love go out to all of them. And then I'd like to thank the members of our team. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. You've given everything. You've given your all throughout all of it. We couldn't have done any of it without you. You've done a beautiful job. Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system. Please don't let this deter you from doing a job you're so well qualified to do. You're all wonderful. You can make it go right, and you'll have a chance to do it again. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I thank my partners, all of you. You're just Fantastic. I can't tell you how fantastic. No one here has spared any effort. Everyone here has put in 110%, given their all for everyone, for justice, for the families of the victims, in the effort to see that the lives of Ron and Nicole were not thrown away. It was a dignified fight. It showed great courage, great integrity, great moral strength. And we have every reason to be proud of every single one of them, and we are. Thank you.
I never expected I would be here in this time and in this place and in this position. If there was anything that ever motivated me throughout the trial, it was the idea, the notion that one day I'd have to turn into the Goldmans and with the realization that he had been acquitted. But that is the verdict, that's the jury's position, that's their voice, and I accept that verdict. We came here in search of justice. You will have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it today. But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
And please give us a moment. I guess I've always been referred to as the calm one, but it is very it's very difficult for any of us to speak without great emotion today. The verdict comes as a great disappointment, and I want to tell everyone here, I want to tell everyone in this county, and I want to tell everyone in this country that you can be proud to the hilt of the effort made by the prosecution team in this case. This was a classic team effort. None of us, take all the credit, and all of us share in the disappointing verdict today. I've been involved in a number of long or epic trials over time, and I have never seen anyone work so hard in behalf of the people as the team that we had in this case. And that goes from investigator to law clerk to stand-up attorney in the courtroom to research attorney. Every single person here on this team sacrificed greatly to try to bring the Browns and the Goldmans justice, and to bring justice to the county and for everyone. We won't forget Ron and Nicole. We won't forget them ever. And we may have to carry on the fight in their names in a different way after this. But for the Browns and the Goldmans, we're not going to give up. And for Ron and Nicole, we'll never forget you, ever. Thank you.
Let me, if I might, just to clear the record too, I left out a couple thank yous. Daryl Mavis, thanks Daryl. And certainly to my executive staff, my chief deputy, Sandy Buttigia, and Frank Sunstead, the entire staff. I mean, this truly was a team effort. And I said one last time before you take your questions, I've been in the office 27 years. I am extremely proud, and every citizen in this county, perhaps even this country, should be proud of the professional effort that was made here. We'll take a few of your questions.
Bill, in the
Simpson matter over, or would you consider any possible federal charges, and are there any?
It's over from our viewpoint.
Is this investigation now going to be reopened from square one, the whole murder investigation?
Are you talking about this case?
You're going to find the killer?
The lights just went out. That's, I stand in front of you. We all stand in front of you with the belief that the evidence was there. This was not, in our opinion, a closed case.
Gil, can we hear from Fred Goldman about whether or not
The
he's
Goldmans
determined...
are not going to be speaking.
You said apparently that this was a verdict based on emotion. I just wanted to see if you could elaborate on that.
I couldn't hear you.
You said that this was a verdict apparently based on emotion. Why do you believe that? With the swiftness at which it came in?
Well, we have less than 3 hours deliberation after, what, almost 9 months worth of evidence? I don't know. Yeah, I said I haven't had the opportunity to discuss it with the jurors, so I don't know.
You've done your best. You've had a huge amount of effort and time expended on this, and yet there are people out there in the streets all over Los Angeles cheering for O.J. Simpson. Why is that?
I'm not a psychologist. I can't answer that. I think you probably have more people who are profoundly disappointed with the result. Chris?
Is there one point in this trial that you think is a pivotal kind of turning point, one way or another, that was particularly the moment in the whole trial?
I don't think so. Is there? I mean...
Gil, just to follow up on Jermaine's question, considering the swiftness of this verdict after 8 months of testimony, is this a legitimate verdict?
Is this a legitimate verdict? Call it whatever you want. It's the verdict. And I'm not going to put any adjective in front of the verdict. It's a verdict.
Do you think the historians will look back on it and consider a nullification verdict?
Well, certainly there are going to be many people who look at this, that this was, in fact, jury nullification.
Gil, all along you've said that you had a mountain of evidence. What does this tell you about justice?
Give us a chance to reflect. I mean, this is... I don't know how... if you can really appreciate the profound disappointment that we're all feeling. Had this been a close case, all right. But you have professionals up here. We're surrounded by professionals. Every person here has tried so many cases, difficult cases, and very thin cases, that we refer to them, where you don't know what the jury is going to do because it's very close in the way of evidence. In our professional judgment, it was overwhelming evidence. We still believe in the evidence in the case.
Given the reactions, different reactions within the city, how do you not lose faith in the system when you have so many people who feel one way about this and so many people feeling the other way?
Give me an opportunity to reflect on this before I'll take one more question.
The ugly truth really at this point, though, that this whole case did cut on race in the end.
Before I have an opportunity to hear what you learned from the jurors, I'm not going to respond to that. I mean, you have to understand that there is profound disappointment, but I have to admit to you that there's, unlike Chris, I have a little anger too. And so I rather just be a little more reflective here before I do it.
At all that this kind of verdict, there are people out there who are not cheering as well. Do you think that this kind of verdict or this verdict will have some impact on people's faith in the system?
I didn't just fall off the back end of the turnip truck. And when you ask, are there people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system? Of course there are going to be people who are going to be doubting the criminal justice system. But let me emphasize one thing. We've heard it time and again, but this case is not the usual case. Don't look at this case as being really how most cases are handled, or how most juries, or how most judges, or how most everyone who's involved in the process deals with the case. That's not the case. The jurors do the right thing, nearly all the time. That's it, folks. Thank you.
When do you think you can talk to them?
I only have a few things to say. Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. Excuse me. I want to thank, on behalf of my family, of all decent, law-abiding citizens in this country and nation, Marcia Clark, Chris Darden, Bill Hodgman, Gil Garcetti, I'll forget names, I'm sorry, quick help. Everybody, every single person in this DA's office. Until the other day, I had, honest to God, no clue how many people in this office had worked day and night for a year toward one goal, and that's justice. And to each and every single one of them, our profound thank you and blessings. Not to forget Mark, our victim's advocate, backbone. This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served. I and my family will do everything in our power to bring about the kind of change that won't allow what happened today to ever happen to another family again. In closing, I only have one other thing to say, because I don't want to forget. I forget a lot of things. To my wife, Patty. To my daughter, Kim. To Michael and Lauren and Brian. My other kids. To all of our deep, close friends. Who have been there for us for this year and 4 months or 5 or whatever it's been. Who have helped us daily get through each day. We'll never be able to say thank you enough. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
Thank you all.
press conference held by the prosecution, and Fred Goldman, though he said he wasn't going to speak, addresses the court, says justice has not been served, and herald from the words of Gil Garcetti to Chris Darden, who was overcome with emotion and had to leave the podium, to Fred Goldman. You know that everyone that stood behind that podium believes that they had the evidence to convict O.J. Simpson for the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, and they feel deep personal loss as well as professional loss.
No question about it. I believe Marcia Clark said words to the effect, do not let this verdict have you lose faith in the system. Gil Garcetti said emphatically the evidence was there. Chris Darden pointing out he wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry. He said they came in search of justice.